today. We'll introduce you a little later, but welcome. To every one of us here, I think this is the great moment that would help to define the kinds of engagements and discussions that are necessary for our presidential election. Many people say charity begins at home, but some build from the top without foundation, and that can be problematic. So we are happy that finally we can build up from the foundation. Now, somebody asked me the other day, do you feel slighted that people are going to Chatham House? I said, not in the least. We can never feel slighted. The NI is very proud of its origins, and that origin would not be complete without Chatham House. What you have here is similar to what you find in the Indian Council of World Affairs. These two Global South leading think tanks were midwifed by Chatham House. And therefore, whatever takes place in Chatham House has a branch here. So we complement each other. It is just that in this complementing, the right steps have not been taken. That's all that can be said. We don't feel slighted at all. We acknowledge it, and for this reason, we had reached out to institutions that are like-minded in South Africa and across Africa. And we had engaged our presidential candidates. We had written to them since last year to say we want to have a two-step interaction. That we should come to them outside Nigeria. So be it. The trajectory that we have evolved along the path of in the last couple of months that should worry us. Here at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, we know that right now there is the Davos conference that is going on. We recognize also that many times discussions about Africa are now held outside of Africa. Summits to which Africans are invited. Some are disqualified from attending even African conferences. And the voice diminishes every day. As an institute, we are determined to bring Africa back to Africa. And we have decided that beginning this year, we must redirect the world's attention from those capitals that they now appear to really celebrate. In Paris, in London, in Geneva, in the United States, in New York and Washington and so on. we should bring them back. We should redirect everyone. So I'm sure that, by the time we have a new president in our country, we would have gone round full circle to ensure that if Chatham House is going to feature at all, it will feature through the NI. NI would not feature through Chatham House. If the African Economic Summit is going to be meaningful, it would happen here, not in Paris. And I also said to a seasoned journalist last week, now think of it. When we go abroad to these summits, just take a look at all those who are attending. They are people we have come with from home. So it's almost all the time Nigerians convening outside to speak to one another. Now, I think we can save a lot, if we talk to ourselves here. Now, the essence of the series that we'll be having with presidential candidates is to say that because of Nigeria's status and role, the world is waiting to hear what our presidential candidates want to do with Nigeria. How much understanding of the dynamics do they have? The world is changing, it's becoming more turbulent. If you were listening very carefully, because the compare said Ambassador Segun Odegbami terrorized people, some people here would think that Segun Odegbami is a terrorist. No, he's not a terrorist at all. He's a football terrorist. But if this was said, another time in the past, we would not think the way we are thinking. It just tells you that, even the concepts that we use get reinvented, and the reproductions of these things create new realities and new narratives. So what do our presidential candidates have to offer? What do they say, for instance, about the world in which we live today that remains so inequitable, so unequal, where the exchanges are not even? The world in which we've been consigned to the margins of hewers of wood and drawers of water. What Kwame Nkrumah said a long time ago. A world in which we are driven into the waves of free trade only to the extent that we can continue to supply raw materials. And where free trade means you don't exceed your boundaries. You don't even think of manufacturing. You don't add value to whatever you produce. Now, we count our benefits only in terms of the foreign direct investments that we get. But we don't talk about our productivity. Now, today, thanks to great minds like Ambassador Segun Odegbami, we have new vistas of diplomacy. Sports, culture, music have come fully on board. Do our presidential candidates Nigeria and West Africa hosting the world in a few years' time? And so on and so on and so on. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are very delighted as the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs that you have come to our very first platform. And hopefully, when other platforms come, we are sure that you will be here. My final point will be on the mode of this platform. There were people who asked us to create a debate forum, where candidates will come and say, look, I support America, you support China, you support Taiwan, and so on. Or some other person will come to say, we'll manufacture guns, or we will turn your guns into powder, and so on. But we thought, no, we should have standalone sessions. Each presidential candidate will have the platform so that we can have a robust engagement. And all the presidential candidates living here would know that they now have the foundation for engaging the world. This is the meaning of what NIA does in terms of formulating foreign policy. We must let our people know what the stakes are, what the national interest would be, and how to negotiate and bargain with the rest of the world in ways that would be of utmost benefit to our country. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, it's our pleasure to have you here today. And we hope that you continue to support the NI in this journey. The final thing, I hope you all have your PVCs. I hope that you're all going to make your votes count. I hope that on the 25th of February, you'll go out there and vote. We are not asking you to vote for a particular candidate. We're simply saying, please use your franchise. It's a power that you have, so that when we reap the benefits of the huge harvest that will come from our elections, you will say, I was part of it. You're already part of it now. That's why you're here. So welcome.
Thank you very much, Director General. Thank you very much, sir. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies here present, you would have observed that the next item on the agenda is the presentation by the presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party. I am to give a citation on His Excellency, the presidential candidate. I'd like to inform His Excellency before I do that, sir, after your presentation, you have a three-man team that can very easily be categorized as a firing squad. And if they run out of ammunition, there are so many people in this room that have like some spear to throw at you after that. We will find those listed under number 6 of the program. I'd like to introduce them before you make your presentation. Professor Femi Otunbanjo, please be recognized. Ms. Amarachi Obani, please be recognized. And Mr. Suleiman Alede. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, they are our three-man panel. I always feel uncomfortable using that phrase. So let me say, panel of a lady and 2 gentlemen. Thank you very much. I have the singular honor to present the citation on Prince Adewale Adebayo, the presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party of Nigeria. Prince Adebayo, the presidential candidate under the SDP, cannot be missed in a crowd. Thank you for your humility, Your Excellency, for standing up. We appreciate you, sir.
Thank you.
The immensity of his numerous aptitudes and equivalence as a person stands him out at every gathering. One can hardly meet a more confident, a more eloquent person who cherishes life, especially the life of the mind. He invests in its cultivation continually. And today, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we have one of Nigeria's finest brains. Lucid in logic and very entertaining and humorous in his engagement with everyone that comes his way. He easily ranks among the most educated and able Nigerians in his field. And he has certainly proven his mantle in public service. He is an established and well-recognized philanthropist. His gesture of kindness and empathy, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, cuts across not just Nigeria, but far beyond our shores in Africa and the other continents. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Prince Adebayo was called to the bar in the year 2000 after completing and passing his bar exam from the Nigerian Law School. In 2002, shortly afterwards, he returned to Lagos following his NYSC in Kogi State. He joined the Tunji Abayomi law firm, where he quickly rose through the ranks. He holds a Master of Law from the University of Lagos. He has participated extensively in the activities of the Nigerian Labour Congress as a comrade, and he has made friends across Nigeria who admire him for his strength of character, his integrity and zeal, and most importantly, his friendship with the working class. He was to later leave the firm of Tunji Abayomi for Abuja, where he established his own personal firm, Adewale Adebayo and Co., House of Law, as it is called. As the principal solicitor of that firm, he came to prominence as a leader in his professional field, while also investing particularly in young people. Prince Adebayo is well known by a particular crop of young people, those who are undertaking the National Youth Service Corps. He has employed many of them, very many of them. He has empowered so many others. He has facilitated their efforts at taking their stance in society. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this fine son of the Federal Republic of Nigeria that stands before you today has contributed immensely to the growth of the law profession from a different angle, particularly that of establishing young lawyers. The sheer breadth of Adebayo's knowledge, Prince Adebayo's knowledge, his breadth of mind, the clarity of his analysis, and his competence soon brought him to the national limelight. This young prince, ladies and gentlemen, has overcome many hurdles on his way to the top. There's a long list of his qualities. On his way to the top. As you can see, there's a long list of many hurdles on his way to the top. As you can see, there's a long list of many hurdles on his way to the top. As you can see, there's a long list of many hurdles on his way to the top. As you can see, there's a long list of many hurdles on his way to the top. DG, you know, one of the things people don't do to me is call me to the sideline. So I'm going to tell everybody what you have just told me. The DG said whether I have consulted the spirit of my ancestors. to put on record that particular remark I made about His Excellency. But distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the truth is that certain characters and certain elements of our personality needs to be engraved in the sand of time. Maybe it's fate that is re-echoing that part of the attributes of His Excellency. But now that we have it on record, I think with your kind permission, I can move on. Digi, sir. Thank you, sir. I am going to bridge these so many pages of the citation on His Excellency Prince Adebayo. I will pick and choose, Your Excellency, and I hope it will do no injustice to this very long profile that you have. You are the chairman of Blueprint Global Group, Washington, D.C., board advisor of U.S. Black Chambers of Commerce, board advisor, National Black Chambers of Commerce, USA. You are also president and board chairman of several corporations in the United States, in Nigeria, and in East Africa. I expect a round of applause for that. And because I am a Benue man, this part of His Excellency is close to my heart. He is a farmer. Benue State is the food basket of the nation. So, Your Excellency, I relate with you on this particular profile of yours. His Excellency is a farmer. But here is the catch. This is a farmer with a difference. He is the chairman of Sai Phytochemicals. They are the producers of saline drugs for treatment of sickle cell anemia in India and Nigeria. This This is a very unique and innovative approach, not just to food production and food security, but the cross between that and our health sector. As the chairman of Africa Dialogue Mission, Your Excellency was in 2006 appointed by the United Nations Organization and ECOWAS as Commissioner on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Liberia. His Excellency is a grassroots person. That much our DG has acknowledged in his presentation. A passionate son of the soil, he decided in 2016 to relocate his business to his hometown of Ondo State in order to contribute to the development and growth of the town and the state as a whole. A round of applause, please. For those who shuttle Abuja and the other capitals, they know how difficult it is to substitute the other capitals for your village or your town. So, Your Excellency, we commend you for the nexus that you are trying to create, and indeed have succeeded in creating, between the urban centers and our rural areas. In December 2016, Prince Adebayo held a one-week retreat at his country home in Ondo Kingdom. It was at this retreat that the objective and mission statement of KAFTAN TV was birthed. KAFTAN TV is headquartered in Ondo with additional offices in Lagos, Abuja, and Washington, D.C. in America. KAFTAN TV broadcasts on StarTimes, Ben TV, and Langsat. Your Excellency, it will please you to know that we have had KAFTAN TV with us here on very many of our programs. So much is being said here about KAFTAN TV, but since they have not paid me for any advert, I am going to cut it short at this point. KAFTAN TV, you can see me later for further, you know what I mean. Thank you very much. Nevertheless, we appreciate you for all the great work that you do, and for also bringing all the very important issues that are trashed here in the NIIA to the knowledge of the wider Nigerian and African populace. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I must bring this very, very long citation to a close at this point, not only to avert wasting any more time, but so that His Excellency can also get onto the business that he has been asked to come and do. Let me just conclude by saying that he is a recipient of many awards in the recognition of his service to state, community, and to humanity. In 2021, he was recognized by the Ondo State government as the individual who pays the highest personal income tax to Ondo State. In the same 2021, November this time, he was bestowed with the awards of the Best Media Reporter of the Year by the Nigerian Union of Journalists. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is with privilege and honor that I present to you His Excellency, one of Nigeria's presidential aspirants. Candidates, I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. One of Nigeria's presidential candidates, Prince Adewale Adebayo. Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency. Thanks for your generosity.
Your Excellency, you are very welcome. If you need anything, just signal.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, other dignitaries here, too many to mention and extol, fellow Nigerians, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be here. And it's a great achievement to be here, both for me and my party, the Social Democratic Party, and for my generation and my country. I know I'm here as a presidential candidate, but there's a lot of growing up to do There's a lot of growing up to do to become a presidential candidate. And one of the growing up that I did was that I used to believe, with all the logic in my brain, that Segun Adegbami was a mathematician. So I assumed that he was a mathematician. So, but it became clear that if I wanted to do well in mathematics, maybe I should look towards other sources. And I was looking at it, and Professor Chike Obi became another source for my mathematics. But when I got to Ife, and I became the football coach for the school, for the students, I now realized that I wasn't too wrong, because there's a lot of geospatial management you have to do to be able to hold your side of the field and make incursions to the other side and be a terrorist, as they say you should be. So I'm grateful to see a person of history being here, and I'm grateful to see everyone here. And we stand on the shoulder of giants here. And I must pay tribute to the Institute, to the Dr. Lawrence Akwalara-Fabomi, who, as a young Nigerian, attending the Royal Institute of International Affairs as a student, and on completing his course in the UK, thought I should not just go to Nigeria and be talking about it. I should come to Nigeria and have it established, and made inquiries on how that could be done. And I was thanked for many reasons beyond this, but particularly today for this, late Professor Kenneth Onwuka-Dike, who also put so much effort in convincing not only Sir Adetokunbo Ademola, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, through other leaders of the country, to reach the Prime Minister to say we should establish the institute. And I must thank the late Justice Louis Mbanefo and many other leaders, including Kashim Imam, and so many other leaders that history has recorded as achieving many great things. But in 1961, even in 1960, just as we were discussing independence, they were already concerned about our place in the world, and that we should have a rational, logical, systematic, and scientific approach to diplomacy. And they said this institute must be established. So as early as September 1960, even before the Union Jack was lowered, the embryo of this institute was already there. And I'm very happy that we're able to come here today. And that is why I can interrogate a bit the concern of Nigerians as to why leaders of today would think that they needed to look outside before they could speak on not only foreign policy of Nigeria, but domestic policy of Nigeria, and the platform and manifesto by which they want the mandate of this country to be vested in them. And since my interview with Arise TV, talking about why I prefer the NIA, I've had some murmurs from London as to whether I thought that they were wrong to offer some generous approach to me to speak at the Chatham House. It is true that we started talking a few months ago. I have a lot of respect for the Chatham House, but I have more respect for the NIA. So I have not rejected the offer of the NIA, of the Chatham House. I've only said that I'm an Ondo prince, and they say in our place that that is to say, you look inwards in naming your child. You don't look outward. And we all say it, I think it was the English that taught us that charity begins at home. And our charity should begin right here. So our friends and allies who want to listen to us, we would come and talk to you. But the fulcrum and the podium and the forum we want to use is here. But we also have interaction with you in due course. Now, today, we are here to look at the world of Nigeria and Nigeria in the world. And I'm looking at it from the point of view that I believe, whether you're a monist or a dualist, whatever you call yourself, whether you're a pragmatist, that foreign policy must be linked with domestic priorities. And when two values are linked, one must predominate, whether you allow it or not. And I believe that your domestic priorities should be the principal consideration, and your diplomacy should be an adjunct to it. So you must wake up in the morning, go into the global stage, asking yourself, who am I? What is my place in the world? What are the challenges I'm facing? What are the challenges I'm facing with other people in common? What are the challenges I'm facing in peculiarity and particularity to me? And how do I use friendships in the world to make life better for me and my people? And that is what every empire before us has done. That is what the Greek did. You know the history of Macedonia. Alexander the Great was not going riding horses all over the world because he liked to see the world. He was going around the world because Macedonia was an island and they could not produce much. And he needed to get the wealth of the world. The same thing with the Romans. The Romans did not come to London and did not go to the rest of the world because Romans liked to ride horses. No, because the Romans knew that they had very little and they needed more. I also know that the British did not go to India just for curiosity. I think a little taste of what was on offer in Asia, in Africa, and in Spain, making so much growth in their GDP just by having those estates in the New World, made the British to say, we need a navy. We need to be able to catch up. So there's nothing new what we are saying here. And as I'm talking to you, diplomacy is also not new in Africa. We did not start diplomacy when the British gave us independence. Even our own traditional institutions and traditional states engage in diplomacy. They use diplomacy to trade. They use diplomacy to share common things like river, like farmland, like hunting ground. They also use diplomacy to settle rifts and wars. As I'm standing before you here, if you do a DNA test, you will see that I have an element of Nupe blood in me, and I have an element of Oyo blood in me, I have an element of Benin blood in me, and other additions. Why? Because after many years of war between the Nupes and the Oyos, fighting across the River Kora, then Soede, very wise statesman, with the sword of Nupe, thought to himself, these Oyo people are getting stronger every day, and we spend most of our time fighting wars. Maybe I should make a rapprochement with them. And the daughter of Swede was married to the Alafin of Oyo, and Shango was born. And Shango is one of the princes of Oyo, but he was given to Swede to live with Swede. So in those years, there was no person who would ever go from Oyo to go and attack Nupeland, because they had become one family. And I am a product and a descendant of that bloodline. So diplomacy has always been with us. And when you look at the relationship between the Shakiris and the Portuguese when they came, that's why Don Domingo went to Portugal to school and became one of the greatest scholars and came back and become the Olu of the Shakiri. Up to today, the Shakiris always regard the Portuguese as their friend and as their cousins. You can say the same thing about the Benin Empire. The Benin Kingdom even went beyond, had an embassy in Lisbon, and the Portuguese had an embassy in Benin. So what we are saying in essence is that diplomacy is not alien to us, and you no need to look at Western diplomacy before you realize that diplomacy is part of our culture. Now, of course, the British came, and we became part of Her Majesty's realm. And for those years between 1900 and 1960, we were just an asset, an overseas asset of Britain. And wherever Britain went, there we had to go. The dog was in London, and the tail was in Lagos, and the dog will always wag the tail anytime. But I will say also that for those who have studied the scholarship of it, the relationship also started with diplomacy. I've read many correspondence and messages between my own great-great-grandfather as the ruler of Ondo and John Glover, who was then a consul in Lagos. And when you read through those correspondences, you will know that the British understood that Yoruba people, at least particularly Ondo people, were great diplomats because we knew how to read the lines and how to read between the lines. So what were we doing today? In 1960, we got our independence. And because of the work of the pioneers of that time, including the founding council of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, we were clear in the world. That was why Balewa was called the golden voice of Africa. He had clarity in what he wanted to say. He understood the world stage, and he projected our mission and purpose on the world stage in a manner that left nobody in ambiguity as to whether we know our place in the world. And what was it? The first thing we said in the world was that we will be non-aligned. And up to now, many years, many decades thereafter, scholars are still struggling to understand what we meant by non-aligned. And all the members of the non-aligned movement had a different interpretation. But the interpretation we had in Lagos, which is also fashioned by the NIA, was that our non-aligned meant our right to decide whether to align or not. And that was why, when our Prime Minister Balewa gave his speech to the United Nations, he said, those who say non-aligned means that you will not be on anybody's side are already committed. So by implication, we told the world we would carry the locum of decision-making. We are not taking position. No, non-aligned doesn't mean we are taking position. We are taking the locum of our alignment from London, and we are bringing it to Lagos. When it suits us, we align this way. When it doesn't suit us, we align the other way. That was the clarity that we brought to the world. And I will also thank the Director General for opening this session with a discussion as to, one, how we export ourselves over, and what in law we call forum shopping. When you have a problem that could be solved in the Djibouti, and you decide to go to Antwerp to go and hold a conference, thinking maybe if a little drop of snow falls around the conference area, maybe you have better imagination of what to do. But you will notice that there are three ways to approach these issues. One of the most fundamental and monumental conferences ever held on Africa was held in Berlin 1884 and 1885. There was no African present, but the entire territory of Africa, her peoples, her history, her treasures were divided among hostile powers who took it by force in the name of gunboat diplomacy. We have never been happy with that. So it's a rich irony if we now are now sponsoring a modern-day version of Berlin Conference over ourselves in foreign territories. So it is not just a mere attempt to be too radical. It is to be responsible in the management of our affairs. Another thing that I want us to make decision about is the one. You can engage, but the subject of engagement must be international, because there is a strong foundation to the United Nations Charter that member countries should refrain from intervening in the internal affairs of other members. Until, of course, you by yourself carry your internal affairs and take it to them. But we must respect that thing if we want people to respect it on our behalf. So then we went with non-aligned movement. Of course, many of you here who are much older than us realize your attitude to the Anglo-Nigerian Pact, because the argument was that the Anglo-Nigerian Pact, it might have some military benefits or other benefits, did not conduce to the spirit of non-alignment. Why? Because the statute of forces component of it would take away our sovereign discretion as to when to be on the side of Britain and when not to be on the side of Britain if international conflict arose. So what we now have is a situation where we lost that republic for many reasons, which are not for today. But when we got to the military regimes that we were having, we also had issues of the day that we had to confront. And how did we add clarity to those issues? Because we have our non-aligned movement, non-aligned philosophy, which we are implementing. However, the world theater has become well exposed to us. We have done peacekeeping in the Congo, we've done so many other things. We are dealing with South Africa, we are dealing with what do we do with our brothers and sisters who are under colonial rule? What do we do about so many other challenges facing us? And through diplomatic sojourning, memory of Joe Gaba, and the scholarship provided by this institute, I want Nigerians to understand that this institute is so important to the national interest of Nigeria, to the sovereignty of Nigeria, to the prosperity of Nigeria, to the safety and security of Nigerians. Because it was from this institute that we started to rethink. We cannot just say non-aligned now. What do? We have to be more communicative and more effective on the field. Then we came up with the idea where Gambari came up with this idea that we should have concentricism. That we cannot just go around in the world working anyhow. We must have concentricism. The same way, Segun Odegbami will not just go to the field. He wants to say who's going to be goalkeeper, who's going to be the midfielder, who's going to be the defender, who's going to be the winger, who's going to be the libero. He wants to plan because he doesn't want to lose opportunities and he doesn't want to be caught flat-footed. So we came up with the idea we must have 4 concentric circles. The innermost circle is that we must concentrate on things that have to do with Nigeria and our immediate neighbors. That is to say, if there's war in Ukraine, heavy war in Ukraine, but there's a riot in Benin Republic, it may make more sense for you to listen more to the riot in Benin Republic because just by your side than to worry about the war in Ukraine, which might take a while to come. The second of the circle is West Africa. And so we must pay attention to West Africa. There are historical, other reasons, strategic reasons why we must pay attention to West Africa. So that's why it's not a surprise that we are reminded that it was in this chamber, very chamber here, that our own Yakubu Gowon and Soglo of Togo started the journey that became ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States, in 1975. So that second circle, we pay attention to it. And the third circle is the rest of Africa. So when you have taken care of the first 2 circles, then you deal with the rest of Africa. And the last part is that the rest of the world, because we're a member of the international community. We're part of the human race. But as we were doing it, that geographical approach to it was interrogated by Adeniji, who said, but why? Just because something is close to your side, is happening in the Niger Republic, doesn't mean that if you have a bigger interest in Vienna, Austria, where you are discussing OPEC, which can affect your income, you should say that you want to pay attention to what's happening in Cameroon. So he came up with the idea that yes, Gambari is right. We must keep these 4 concentric circles. However, we must make them beneficial and constructive. So not only must you play around this circle and attempt priority, you must ask, what is the objective to be achieved in each of these circles? So that is how we coasted around and we came to the conclusion that we must take certain steps, which included a point where we even brought Southern Africa from the 3rd circle, we brought it into the 1st circle. Nigeria became a frontline state in order to deal with apartheid. So we've done all of that. Then we had Shagari, who was trying to do a defensive economic management because it came at a time when we had problems. We didn't have that period when Gowon said money was no problem, how to spend it. We came to a point where we're doing austerity at home. And what do we do? And at that time, people said, well, one of the reasons, they blame us for many things, which we don't have time for, including why did we do First Act 77? Why did we rescue Zimbabwe with so much money? Why are we throwing money all over the world? And now we should go home and face our business. And many people started thinking about that. You will see that later, in 1984, someone came and threw away all our brothers, 3 million of them, and said, get out of here. We don't care. But that discussion made Bolaji Akinyemi to come to the scene and say, wait a minute. Now you don't have as much money as we used to have. But none of these priorities can you leave. So you must find very clever ways by which you do this thing. And he came up with a number of ideas. And one of it was that we must have what they call a concert of medium powers, CMP. That's what you used to do alone. Maybe if you talk to medium powers, so you talk to Turkey, you talk to China. China was medium at that time, now it's become big. Talk to a few of them, then you can come together and take a common position. That way, you will be able to become strong. And also came with another idea that maybe we should have a black bomb. If all fails and we don't have money to do diplomacy, maybe we should develop a nuclear weapon. At least they don't love us, they will respect us. So nobody is going to come here and say don't do that because they know you have the bomb and there's a mutually assured destruction. So they will put you in the room. Nobody is going to listen to you unless you have ability to cause commotion in the international community. Many countries, India, Iran, all of them did that. So we have been struggling with that. Now came 1984, second round of military, 1985. Now we are now dealing with how do we handle, you must remember Ikewachukwu and his economic diplomacy, which scholars say is a scion of what we call developmental diplomacy, which was, let us do economic diplomacy. But it was a needy time, because that was the time where see whether we should sign what Shagari had agreed with the IMF for a loan, $2.5 billion at that time. Now, I think a local government chairman can take that loan now without talking to anybody. But in those days, we were more responsible about it. We were thinking it was a serious matter. Now, economic diplomacy. Then we started getting more engaged with the Bretton Woods institutions. So even a secondary school student knew what World Bank meant, IMF meant, and all of that. And then because we didn't manage our democratization correctly, we now started having people coming here in the name of democratization, human rights, and so many other things. And there are so many other obligations under multilateral agreements that we signed: water for all by the year 2000, education for all by the year 2000, housing, habitat for all by the year 2000, and so many other obligations, which are developmental obligations that we signed to, but which we cannot fund. Therefore, we started being sensitive to funding in Europe and funding in North America, and now even funding in South Asia and other places. So now, if it pleases Nigerian to elect me as president, what world am I meeting? Because Balewa has done his own, everybody has done his own. Buhari is doing his own right now. What world will I meet on May 29, 2003? Now, there are certain obligations. Scholars will know how to define it, but I call it default diplomacy or diplomatic heritage. I cannot become Nigeria president today and I say, well, I'm not too happy about the map of Nigeria. I think Cameroon should be part of us and Benin Republic should be part of us. I cannot do that. I'm not allowed to do that. It is not part of our... I cannot say, well, I don't like the Commonwealth of Nations, I need to quit. No, I cannot do that. I cannot say, well, United Nations, if you don't make me a permanent member of the Security Council, I quit. I cannot do that. So even military, when they do their fellow countrymen coup, they always say, we will continue to respect and abide by all international agreements, giving life to the saying that in international law, pacta sunt servanda. It just simply doesn't, it's not that as fancy as it sounds. It just basically means agreements must be respected. So I will say on behalf of the Social Democratic Party, on behalf of my putative presidency, on behalf of Nigerians, that when the SDP forms the government, we will abide by all agreements signed and executed by Nigeria. And because Nigeria is a dualist country, and I don't want to bore you about that, when you sign agreements on behalf of Nigeria, it must come before the National Assembly before it becomes effective in Nigeria. There are some exceptions here and there, executive agreements, and not the rest of that. But what I'm saying generally is, I said to myself, when I come to NIA, I will put the academics and the experts at rest, that I've been following your work and I know how to speak your language. Now I will speak for myself. In diplomacy, because of our history as a very plural society, because of our nature as a country arising from very hospitable people, because of our long history of being responsible neighbors, we will be a friend of everyone in the international community, without exception. We would be your friend to the extent that you do not antagonize or compromise Nigeria's national interest. It doesn't matter what has happened in the past. We assure the international community that we will continue to be a friendly nation. However, we will understand that we have a world in which we live. What is the world of Nigeria? The world of Nigeria is that by manifest destiny, we are the largest black population in the world. So whether we hide under our table, we cover our faces, we must still come out and lead the black world. We have no other excuse. Because we are also a regional power by the gift of God and by sound record of what we have done in leading and contributing to regional safety, regional security, and regional development. We are the natural leader of West Africa. And we are #1 country in what is called sub-Saharan Africa. So in summary, we are the leader of the black people. And even statistically, if you are black and you are not a Nigerian, that's an exception to the rule. The expectation is that if you are black, if you are likely to be. So for that reason, that affects in the world should not be surprised when we speak about it and when we take unapologetic position. Second, population that is productive and contributory. A population that the world wants to meet. We must be a country that when we go to any mission on consulate, and they say a Nigerian wants to go to your country, that person should feel like, oh yes, he must be going there to make a contribution. I've read many judgments in English courts where in the 60s, a few Nigerians will be caught in some misdemeanor or felony. There was a particular one where a Nigerian was charged with manslaughter. And the judge took time to say, in passing the sentence, that this man, is he a Nigerian truly? The Nigerians I know are very responsible people, astute people, devoted academics, and they love life and they enjoy themselves. He went because he was surprised that this man happened to be a Nigerian who went in London and stabbed somebody. So that is the Nigeria that we project to the world. I, as president, will be your chief diplomat, but every Nigerian has diplomatic status. What you do outside Nigeria, how you are viewed outside Nigeria, is as important as how the High Commissioner is seen or the ambassador. So Nigerians must understand that this diplomacy that we want to do is citizen diplomacy. That is what the Social Democratic Party is bringing to the world. And that is why I took my time to pay attention to Segun Odegbami, because in him is the Pele of Nigeria. And other generations like that will become our cultural ambassadors. When people remember Brazil in Nigeria, they remember them for the football. They don't remember them for their tobacco or oil or other things. We remember them from their football. And the only time my wife has argued with me and questioned my common sense was when I said Brazil is not really that great in football. So what they do, their diplomacy, of cultural diplomacy, even affects my happiness in my house. So what does it mean? It means that, one, we must have our domestic priorities well laid out. And that's why you don't go to Chatham House or anywhere and say that your people are corrupt, your people are poor, your roads are not good, you can't pay your debt. That's not how to be a diplomat. You make those discussions at home, then you go outside to find a way to address them. Secondly, we owe ourselves a duty to set up a proper government, because our diplomacy, our foreign affairs ministry, we used to call it external affairs, it's now foreign affairs, is part of our government. And look at the life of this institute. Originally, when this institute was conceived, it was not part of the government. It was to be an independent institute under its governing council, that the government will give grant and support, and any other Nigerian or friend of Nigeria could give. But military, I suspect because of the Civil War politics, decided that they must take control, not only of the governing council, but of the work of the council, of everything, including the management of it. Well, the first thing I would do as president of Nigeria is to take this institute out of government and make it self-governing and independent, so that it can think, it can criticize the government, it can advise us the way it used to do. Balewa was not in control of anything here, but he would not even write a speech without coming here to say, does it make sense on the world stage? And that's what we're going back to. And I will say in addition, that we must also develop our leadership cadre. If you look at these pictures here, it was almost a given that if you were the Director General of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, you are in the basket to become Minister of Foreign Affairs. Now, you have to compete with the chief dog of the political party. So we have to go back to that era where we understood that the finest of the finest would be the people to represent us internationally. But the charity of that was begin in our cabinet. So in other words, before I go out to do the diplomacy of collecting more, I must do the domesticity of using what I have well. The first priority of our government is abolition of poverty. And it has its own diplomatic side, but majority of it has to do with accountability in our government at home. Because we have more than enough to abolish poverty. In fact, majority of our friends, and I respect them for their friendship with Nigeria, but I know that they love us very well, but they love us particularly because of the enormous wealth that we have. So we would welcome them to partake in the management, enjoyment, exploitation of our wealth, provided that they know that it's our own and for the benefit of our people. And as I stand here, I'm the chairman of a company, WP Syndicate, which was set up in 1938. In the first mission of Balewa to London and then all over the world, he invited the person who was then in my position, J.G. Staley, to accompany him so that we could explain to the world that we had marble and other minerals in a place called Takushara, which is now part of Abuja. So I'm the chairman of that company that was established in 1938. It shows that Balewa knew how to look for foreign investors. He knew how to develop the resources of the country. But before Balewa went to London, he made sure that he planned with the minister in charge of transportation that a rail line should be built up to KEFI, so that when the investors will come, the evacuation of the marble from there to KEFI to transport to Lagos will not be a challenge. So leaders have to have a way to prepare home. And I can tell you today, that reserve, we found other minerals there. That mineral alone is worth not less than $13 billion in today's money. So Nigeria is very wealthy. So we have no problem with that. We manage that. Second, we must manage our sovereignty well. And sovereignty is physical. You must possess. Under international law, not everything is about drinking, champagne, and all of that. There's no finesse. If any force enters your territory and holds that territory for a reasonable length of time, they are a de facto government. Because control over land includes fought-ed armies by force of arms. Therefore, for a reasonable length of time, they are a de facto government. Now, because control over land includes fought-ed armies by force of arms. Therefore, I think that's a sign that